All right. Hello, everybody. I'm just checking to make sure all my technology and stuff is working. We are looking at Google Slides because fonts will not load when I make it full screen, and so we're going nice and simple today. Um, yeah, so welcome to the June meetup. I'm Forrest. I'm the host of the Rust Gamedev Meetup, and today we have some super cool stuff that people are going to be showing off. The point of this meetup is to see what is going on in the Rust game dev ecosystem, and so really focusing on so specifically the programming language Rust. I do want to make it clear: if you're here for the Rust video game, there will be none of that, unfortunately. Um, but we have some pretty cool projects that people are going to talk about. And then afterwards, we do have a Discord server where anybody can come and hang out and chat with some of the developers that are doing stuff. And so we can see and check in with everybody on what they've been up to this month. So without further ado, we'll get started. Um, I think I'm trying to rush through a little bit today because I've accidentally forgot until a few days ago that I scheduled the Rust game, well, sort of scheduled the Rust Game Dev Meetup and the Veloren 0.10 launch to be 2 hours apart. And so I'm a little bit stressed out because of that, but we have our server upgraded, so we should be good to go for the launch. But I mean, the launch days are always stressful. But when in doubt, I always have my Ferris mug. You have failed your borrow checker, just reminding me that uh, life is always okay with Ferris around. All right, so we'll be back in just a second. So first off today, we have Henry here to tell us a little bit about Sugarcubes.
Hi.
Okay, looks like audio's working perfect. All right, there you
Okay. Hi, so I'm Henry. I've been working on a tool/application for theoretical computing and working with state machines and automata. So this application I have up here right now is not the one I made. This is a demonstration for the application I'm trying to sort of be the spiritual successor to. So this is JFlap, and it lets you make automata, just like basic state machines for theoretical computing modeling. Um, so you can see the way you edit things is using tools. So you make states by selecting the state tool, and then you make transitions using a different tool. And then if you want to do something like select, you do the arrow tool. So I recently took a course at school that used this application extensively, and myself and a lot of people ran into a lot of problems, both with it being sluggish to edit things and also being buggy and not having a lot of features we wanted. So now I'll share what I have so far. Okay, can you see this? Cool, I think so. Yep. So this is Sugarcubes, which is named after my professor's favorite expletive. This is meant to be just a more immediately intuitive and usable version of JFlap, which was what I was just showing. So everything in this application uses just the mouse when possible. So obviously we can move things around with the mouse, but the main using loop is double clicking to create a new state. You can then right click it to make it like the initial state, for example, or the final state. You can double click to make another state. And then if you double click starting on a state, you can draw a transition. So if you stop on the same state, you make a transition to itself, and then you can add the symbol. And if you drag to another state, you can make a transition like that. So I have that implemented so far. This context menu lets you delete things, and you can also right-click on transitions to delete them. In JFlap, the only way to delete things was with the delete tool, and then you would have to click on one of the arrows or the icons. So this is pretty minimal at the moment. I only have a hard-coded stepping through a finite automata implemented so far with just a hard-coded string. So in the immediate future, some of the things I want to work on are improving this editing mode. It would be nice to be able to edit transitions rather than just deleting them and replacing them. And I want to implement undoing and redoing, which would be that's another feature that JFlap has, but it only works for certain actions. So it would be cool if everything could be undone and redone. I want to fully implement this simulation mode. So the initial deliverable could be something like a working finite automata editor and designer. Saving, I would like this to be compatible with JFlap. So it would be cool if I could read and write that JFlap format in addition to possibly my own format that could have some additional little features. And yeah, so this is in a pretty early stage, obviously, but I find it pretty usable. And once I get some of the simulation features going, it should be a good tool for editing finite automata. And then in the future, I would love to have it support other things like Turing machines and formal languages. That's about it.
Awesome. This is pretty cool. I think having done like a decent amount of graph theory for like within computer science, I think there's a ton here that you can also do like on the educational side, or like maybe even like a puzzle side, where you have
Mhm.
like some type of state that you have to arrive at, or you have to deduce if some graph is whatever, like cyclic or any of these big words that I don't remember.
Yep.
But what was the specific field you were looking to use it in again? It was finite state machines.
Yeah, so the general goal was to supersede JFlap as a tool for theoretical computing classes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I just took a theory of computing class that used a lot of like, yeah, finite automata, Turing machines, um, and everyone in that class had problems with the program deleting big parts of their projects, etc. So.
Nice. Yeah, I think this is some super cool stuff. And for like the tech stack, so I see us in the browser here. What kind of framework are you using for it?
Yep. Yeah, I meant to mention that. So, this graphical area is using MacroQuad, and that's integrating with the um, eGUI bindings for this top bar.
Okay, interesting. And then with the like the graph that's on the screen right now, that can pretty much all be done through MacroQuad pretty easily, or is there like a little bit of extra work there?
So there was a bit of extra work. Things like these arrows involved sort of like emulating curved lines with a bunch of smaller lines. Um, but yeah, for the most part, there's not terribly much code for this graph area, and it's really extensible and hackable.
I see, I see. Yeah, this is definitely a pretty cool project. I think I just checked out your GitHub and I don't think it's open or public yet. But if you send me the link, I can definitely drop it in chat for people to check out because I think this will be, or is it public? One second. I guess it wasn't just on your pinned. Looks like it's public. Oh yeah, it's there. Okay,
Oh,
perfect.
okay,
Someone posted in
great.
chat. Beautiful. Yeah,
Sounds
so I'll
good.
post this in the announcement so other people can come find it. But I think that this is a, I mean, I like graph theory just all
Yep.
around, and being able to kind of play with this is seems like there's a lot of potential. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Cool. And there's a GitHub pages link on that on the GitHub page.
Oh, okay, for like the docs and stuff like that.
That's the fully
Oh, the
working
actual
WASM
example.
demo.
Ah,
Yep.
very cool, very cool. All right, not bad. Well, thank you very much, Henry. I would love to see this in future months and see how it improves. right, hello again. I don't have any audio for the game coming through, but whatever, I'm not going to worry about fixing that right now. So it's been a few months since we've shown off Veloren, mostly just because I haven't asked anybody on the team to do it with enough leeway before we start with like the actual Gamedev Meetup. Let me see if I can full screen this. All right. Um, all right, here we go. So, Veloren, for anybody who doesn't know, is a game that's built in Rust, pretty much from the ground up. I think actually at this point, since we're using wgpu now, we're definitely a lot closer to having the full thing written in Rust. And there's a large team around the world who's working on this. And we actually have our 0.10 release today, which we're expecting to be pretty big. So right now we have 38 players online, but we're expecting it to go probably well over 100. I think the cap that we've had is 123 online at once. And right now, so our server's in Germany, but we're doing pretty okay. Like my ping is 181. So I mean, sometimes it gets really bad when there's too many people online. All right, that lion might attack me. For the sake of the meetup, I think I'm going to use my admin privileges to time day so that we can just apologize. Sorry, needed to cause I'm streaming to an audience. Okay, there we go. Perfect. So Veloren is like an open world game. It came from like the basis of Cube World, and for quite a long time we've been releasing like a lot of different versions. With this version right here, I think that there's quite a lot of super nifty stuff that we have that we're pretty excited to show off. A lot of massive combat changes, and so like stuff with dungeons, stuff with how players fight and stuff like that. And I think that our physics engine for like airships and stuff has been improved a lot. I don't know if I'm actually, I can kill the lion. It's probably, oh well, it died. Lots of stuff here in the village. I don't know if I can get onto that airship. So for the project, I do a lot of sort of like the outreach. So I write the blog every week, and I focus a lot on like if there's any interviews or stuff like with the GitHub and everything like that. Okay, I don't know if I can easily get on there. I'll try. But the thing is, I don't play the game enough to be like particularly good at it. Okay, well, I missed. I might just load into single player so I can fly around and show some stuff off. And so for anybody who hasn't seen it before, the project started about 3 years ago. Actually, we just had our third birthday, and we have, so since we have so many people around the world working on it, we have some really cool people who can bring some really awesome stuff, whether it be like our like super intense physics engine, our like level of detail, like you can see off in the mountains, like with proper erosion that simulates it and stuff like that. Or just like the people working on like the combat team and the animations and the models. There's also some super awesome composers who are working on a lot of. Okay, that person looks like they have some pretty powerful stuff here. I don't know if I'm allowed to go back to the hometown. Oh, maybe this is the hometown. I think the spawn that everybody's at is around here somewhere. Which if we have this many players online, then we should be able to see a lot more. But at the release party, which is happening 2 o'clock my time, so an hour and 45 minutes from now, we'd love to have anybody come out who wants to give it a try and kind of see what it's like to have like 70 or so people around spawn just messing around. For the game, you can go to veloren.net and you can get the download. You can download the launcher there. The launcher is called Airshipper, and it allows you to just stay up to date with the game, since we build nightly versions every day, because there's just so many changes that are happening all the time. I'm gonna log into single player so I can show off some stuff without the fear of dying here. It might lag out my computer. Probably not though. My computer's pretty strong. So big things that we have coming up. I think a big system that was just merged was like the meat system. So this was a lot of stuff to do with crafting and and consumables and stuff like that. Okay, I have like my cheat one so I can fly around and stuff. I forget if clouds were like implemented in this version or a previous one, but if I like time day, you can see like a full like day night cycle happen right here. And so we have like volumetric clouds, which I think are super duper cool. I'll spawn an airship up here. I don't actually know how to pilot it. I'm checking the chat. Any questions? I think we have someone here who's answering some stuff for us. Um, and then also, actually, I think one of like the other big things from this release is that with the dungeons, there's been a lot more added to them in terms of content and in terms of scalability. And so if I go to the map and I zoom in on one of these dungeons, this is like a level 3 dungeon, so you can expect it to be quite a bit more difficult. And if I'm not mistaken, we have had some boss changes to the dungeons, and so I think there's some pretty cool stuff there. Let me see if I can navigate myself to that one. We can take a quick look. But since the game is open source and since it's free to play, I mean, the best way to come and see like what's going on is to come and just hang out at the release party, see how everybody else is doing. So is he? Oh, actually, okay. There's one thing that was merged that I really need to show off because it's just amazing. Let me just get the clouds out of here. More clouds. All right. Well, I guess we're gonna always have clouds. So there are recent updates to the glider to make it a lot more physically accurate, but also so fun to fly. Now, when it's in multiplayer, there are some times that it has some difficulties, but in single player, it is so smooth. There's a dungeon right behind us that we were looking at. So, in our blog, we have some write-ups by the person who did physics about what kind of stuff they had to take into consideration when it came to the glider and came to representing it properly. And so there's a ton of pretty crazy stuff going on there. And then, yeah, I think in the future, I mean, if you're playing on a server with your friends, pretty like local and stuff like that, then it's definitely something that's worth giving a try. I think this is, I think that's water down there. Yeah, we've got a little river that we're flying by here. All right, so I think, I mean, I could talk about this for hours and dive into some deeper stuff. I definitely recommend checking out the blog. We put one out every week, and it talks about what kind of stuff has been worked on. And most importantly, we get to hear from the people who are actually working on these things themselves. And so they tell us about how everything's implemented and what you can expect in the future, or what types of things that they're working on. And then I'm a plug it again. Definitely show up to the release party. It's gonna be a ton of fun with everybody there. And we provisioned the most powerful server yet, and so hopefully we can handle more than we've been able to in the past. But I'm going to call it here just because I could play for a long time. But we should probably get back to the other game dev stuff. And so the release party is exactly what is today? It's the 12th, so it's at 6 p.m. or 18 o'clock GMT. And if you can either go to veloren.net to download it, you can join our Discord. There's links on the website. I'm just checking if there's any questions here. All right, yes, we have some questions in the chat. Some questions about, I think, the level of detail. I'll probably leave those for now. And then hopefully next month we can show off some cool new stuff. All right.
I'm as ready as I can be.
All right, so next up we have Acton and Daxpata here to talk about Cosmic Verge updates.
Hi, so we've been hard at work on a lot of different stuff this last month, and we're going to give you a quick update. We're not going to be hopefully too long-winded because unfortunately we didn't quite get to the demo point that we were hoping to, but that means that next month's demo should hopefully be even better. So Cosmic Verge is going to be a 2D systematic sandbox MMO. It's fully open source. The game concept is still in early development, and we basically have been undergoing a long oxidation phase where we've been rewriting writing our own database engine and various other parts, which means that we're very, very Rust focused. From here, this is our current architecture diagram with all the crates that we're maintaining and developing for this massive project. There's a new one there, GUI and Style CS, that I'll talk briefly about. And all the other ones that are colored blue have been updated in some fashion this month. I'm mostly going to be focusing on the changes on the user interface front, because that's where I've been focused. It is yet another early in development GUI crate. There's a lot of reasons for it. The simplest thing that I'll say is that I'm just passionate about user interfaces myself. So I like doing this. My first professional job was for a company called Real Software. They made Real Basic. So I've been working on cross-platform stuff for a very long time. So it's near and dear to my heart. And there's just bits and pieces of all the existing frameworks that aren't exactly what I personally prefer, and so I'm trying to build kind of my ideal thing. It's going to be currently targeting native, which I mean native executable via Clusion, which is my game engine. I've been making efforts to try to make it so that you can use Clusion within any other wgpu app, and then we're also going to be building for the DOM as well. So that's what you see down there is we're actually using DOM elements, and on the left is our Clusion app. We only currently have a button, so it's very early in development, but our goal is for this to be more of a general purpose UI framework, not specifically one built for games, because the use case is also just to strengthen the idea of building cross-platform apps on top of PliantDB, our database project. And then the other notable thing is that we kind of decided that to kind of really dog food everything ourselves as well as possible. We're going to initially be targeting a Canvas widget for doing our actual sprite drawing, which should hopefully mean that we write it once and get it in the browser and natively as well. So the goal I kind of already mentioned a little bit, but you can see that in the DOM we actually render the actual button div type or element type. And we are kind of trying to structure things in such a way that you could bring your own front end if you want. So there's no reason that browser and the rasterizer layer have to be the only two front ends. Since I have a lot of experience of writing Win32, GTK, and macOS code, even classic as well as Carbon and Cocoa, I kind of know roughly how you might be able to implement those someday. We're not trying to do those, but in theory, I've written kind of a basic fundamental structure that would allow that someday. So that's kind of the goal. This is the demo that I barely got working before today, where we're using PliantDB behind the scenes to use PubSub to drive the counter so that two completely separate processes are getting and receiving those click events. It's coming along, and hopefully next month we'll actually have a real live demo rather than just a pre-canned recording. So I'm going to pass it over to Dax to talk about Custodian now.
Thanks. So Custodian was just a much bigger project than I have anticipated personally. Mostly the issue is that what we're trying to do is missing a lot of standards to talk with the hardware. And the operating systems provide a lot of different API frameworks. It's not very clear which one to choose. Some are deprecated, some are not, some should be deprecated. Documentation is usually pretty terrible. So it just has been a pretty huge work in progress until now. One of the bigger issues about Custodian is testing. So at some later point, we're going to have to figure out how to test, and I'm probably going to have to procure some devices to further development or further testing. And yes, so what I've been mostly doing the last months was just endless hours of research. So in Custodian, we're actually trying to get away from passwords, but passwords are still important for backup. So for example, if you lose your security key, or if you don't have access to your email anymore, if you're using Magic Link or something like that. And this is just a simple example of how it looks in Custodian to transfer passwords during registration and login. And it's pretty straightforward. There is always 2 steps on each side, 2 steps on the server and 2 steps on the client. And when you like the conclusion of all of this is basically that passwords are never stored on the server, they're never transmitted over the network, and if your database leaks, then nothing is lost. Like the hacker can't do anything with this information except if he manages to kind of spoof himself to be the server. And so this is like the highest safety you can get for passwords at the moment. And we don't use the opaque crate directly. We use Argon ID instead of scrypt, which should improve on the security of this. It's also recommended by the opaque spec. And these are the 2 crates that we're using to make that happen. So for the biggest piece of work in custodians, the point was to get TPMs working cross-platform on all devices. And the goal is mainly session extension for now. So that means after you log in, you don't want to log in every single time with your password or whatever you have set up to get in again. You want to store something securely on that device that verifies that you have logged in on this device before. And so the main issue with that is that that secret can be stolen. Like, for example, you know it from web pages, that's usually a cookie. And when you're working with a desktop application, you just save it somewhere. Worst case scenario, save it in a file. Usually a better scenario would be to use the keychain of the operating system. The main issue with all of that is like we need it to be non-exportable, so it can't be stolen. And the way to achieve this is to use TPMs or secure enclaves. These are basically like hardware supported ways to generate and store keys in an area where they can't be exported, even physically in the case of TPMs, for example. And so you use asymmetric encryption to verify that this device really was used for the login. And the main deal with TPMs, basically, why it has been so hard is because of software support. And what you need is, to make it cross-platform, to make it basically available on Windows. We use CNG, this cryptography next generation. There is a software fallback built in. It has no access control because Windows doesn't really do that. And we use the crate pointed out here. There's a lot of pull requests that will need to be done to make all of this working in the future. The same applies to macOS. macOS has a much better story. There is complete access control, so no other application or process on the computer can actually access these secrets and kind of try to maliciously log in with this secret. And Linux kind of was like the worst implementation detail here. So we tried to use PKCS11. Which is a little bit complicated because the way to access these libraries on Linux is not very well known. In any case, there are bindings in Rust, so that's what we're using. And in the future, we will need some sort of fallback for distributions who don't have support for PKCS11. And there is something already planned, and I'm working on that already. And Linux has a software fallback that's completely separate from TPMs, and that's secret service. You probably know that from Seahorse, for example. And there is already a great crate for that. So Custodian is just going to wrap all of this in like one single API that's easily consumed. Yeah, that's it from me.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's it for me. So I'll drop a couple of links, mostly the Discord and forum links in chat. So any questions, let me know.
Perfect. It's always good to see. Oh, perfect. It's always good to see what you guys are working on with Pliant DB and everything like that. Just want to sort of check in about Cosmic Verge with like the progress that you've had. So you're sort of waiting for some of the stuff from, I suppose, Pliant DB to be ready before starting to integrate it, you think?
Yeah, our goal for last month was to try to get an unauthenticated version of Cosmic Verge up and running, and that was kind of the goal for this month too. But the GUI framework took a lot longer to develop than I was hoping for, and it involved a lot of refactoring. I actually had a pull request to Kludgeon to remove 13,000 lines of code, which is very alarming when you realize that you were able to remove that much code, and still have 5,000 left over.
Yeah.
But a lot of that code is essentially shifting over to GUI because that's the UI code that I ripped out essentially. So it's been just kind of a big work in progress, and we're very close to the point that we're hopefully going to spin up the next version of Cosmic Verge that has all this oxidized backend. So.
Yeah, awesome. Someone in chat is asking if you can share your notes and slides on the TPM stuff. I think especially since it's sort of unique to be building out the ecosystem for it cross-platform. Have there been any other projects that are sort of attempting the same stuff with TPMs?
Yes, there is an organization company, I'm not sure exactly, called Parallax Second, I believe. I'm using one of their crates. Their approach is quite different, though. They're trying to build some sort of daemon, more or less like a Linux service. It's currently only Linux, but they actually plan to make it cross-platform. But it doesn't really fit into the model of like I want a library that I can consume. This is more like an operating system tool. But yeah, they are doing some really amazing work. About nodes, we actually have a discourse where I dropped a lot of my Windows nodes, and I'm planning to drop all the other nodes. At the end of the day, though, I'm trying to actually make some kind of guidebook for Custodian where all of the implementation details are listed, because it's actually like quite a security sensitive crate, and so it is really important for consumers to actually understand what implementation details are used and what pros and contras have been evaluated.
Yeah. So I do imagine that there's a lot of like documentation that you'll have to build out for that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's super cool though. So yeah, next month I'm excited to see where it goes, and hopefully we can see some Cosmic Change Verges or Cosmic Verge changes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Cheers.
All right. Screen share.
All right. So next up
Keaton,
we
can
have.
Can you see my webcam?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think I have it set up on Discord to.
Yes, I
Wait,
see it. Yes, I see
All
it.
right.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Sorry.
That is for me.
Oh, that's for you. Okay.
The slide responsive.
All right. So next up we have Kevin and True Doctor here to tell us about what's been going on with Graphite.
All right. So this is the update from Sprint 4 of the Graphite project. So what is Graphite? If you have not been around for the past 3 or 4 or 5 meetups to hear the discussion, Graphite is an in development open source 2D graphics editor, which is aiming to be sort of a 2D complement of Blender, which is really good at being a 3D open source editor. This is aiming to be a 2D open source editor, sort of displacing the market area that is fulfilled mostly by GIMP, Photoshop, Inkscape, and Illustrator. It's aiming to do 2D and 3D vector art, and it's mostly doing so using a sort of an intuitive system of using tools as opposed to something a little bit more like programmer friendly. It is mostly artist friendly, and it's intentionally being designed with a very high focus on user experience. It is also node based, which means that everything you do is non-destructive, and as a result, you're able to make your artwork and then make changes to it, or you're able to supply input data, or even use it as use your documents as inputs to a library that you can embed in other programs, such as other Rust programs you might make. Another Rust game development related on the Rust game development related topic. If you are making a game, you will be able to embed the render engine in the future and load in documents and then supply it data, and it will be able to potentially update your rendered thing to create textures for your games. It's meant to be very versatile with its node-based approach, and it's sort of kind of aiming to be the Houdini of the 2D world, where Houdini is extremely powerful at many, many use cases. That's the same for Graphite. So we have some updates this month. We improved. I'm just kind of going to read through these quickly since we have a lot more demos to show. But we improved the way that WASM and TypeScript handle type safety and data transfer. Just for some quick overview, the stack that we're working on is a Rust backend that currently gets compiled to WebAssembly, and then we have a small WASM layer, WebAssembly or WASM layer that is used to interop between the Rust API that we have exposed. That will also be a library that we provide to other users in the future if they wish to implement their own Graphite editor or their own Graphite document handler or their own Graphite renderer. Then we have that WASM layer that connects with the TypeScript, and that TypeScript is using a web application built in Vue. This is sort of a temporary solution because we wish to have a fully native Rust-built UI that will also then be compiled to WebAssembly. But at the moment, we have to just rely on the DOM because the DOM and HTML and CSS is the most mature GUI framework that we had available to us at the moment. So next up, what we worked on this past month for Sprint 4 is implementing the floating menus, including popovers, the menu bar, and drop-down menus. This is basically a big effort to make it so you can click on different types of interactive input widgets and give it values or select things from drop-downs. I will show you that in the demo. Then we have a working show and hide layer button. So in the layer panel, you can actually show and hide your layers. And then the front-end naming and design standardization is basically just some code cleanup. And then functional color picker and set shape colors. You can actually pick your color now, and now the shapes that you draw will be the color of the shape you do, of the shape you have set up. Then we have an SVG exporter. So if you make some art, you can actually export that artwork as an SVG and download that. And then also we've got a menu bar with icons, keyboard shortcuts, and submenus. So if you go to File, Edit, View, and so on from the top, that top menu bar, you can go ahead and navigate through those. And for example, you can hit Undo or you can hit SVG Export, and it will actually function. And we've got a drop-down menu input widget as well, which is a big accomplishment because it's actually kind of challenging to implement that. And I'll show you that in the demo. And then finally, we have set up our system for doing sprints, and we have increased the number of issues that we have available in our issue backlog tremendously. Previously, we were somewhat starved on issues because we had not made them. So now, if you're interested in contributing, there is a large series of issues that range in difficulty from beginner-friendly to more complex that is nicely organized. So we will also now reprioritize those for Sprint 5, which is starting right after this meetup. And then finally, go ahead to Doctor.
Yeah, we had some issues with our general input management, and we did a major overhaul of our whole input system. I'm going to walk you through the basics of that new system. Keaton?
There, okay.
Right. Yeah, we now have a message-based system. So from the front end, we get an input message. The message just takes if you press the Z key on your keyboard, then an input message is generated. I think we might have too many slides in here. We construct an input message, and then we turn that message into a fully qualified message. All of our messages are basically just namespace enums. So we have one root message component, and for each subcomponent of our application, we have a sub-message. In this case, the input message is intended to be consumed by the input mapper. If we advance it through. Yeah, turn that into a fully qualified message, hand that off to the dispatcher. Yeah, I think you have to click through some of those animations. The dispatcher dispatches the message to the input mapper. The input mapper takes the input, in this case the Z key, and converts it into the appropriate action. We have fully customizable user key bindings, but the default will be undo. So we create an undo message, and that message is then handed off back to the dispatcher. The dispatcher dispatches it to the document. The document renders the new SVG, well, it renders the new canvas, and then creates a front-end update canvas message, which is then, again, you know the drill, handed off to the dispatcher. Dispatcher dispatches the message to the front end, and then the front end does the JavaScript interopt and actually renders the new canvas to the DOM. That is basically our input system.
All right. And now just a quick comparison from a month ago, a screenshot of the program, and as it is now, a month later. So this is a month ago, and now we have full color artwork, not just a single color, and additional polish in different areas. I'm going to flip back and forth between them a few more times. All right, and we'll see a little bit more now in the live demo. Okay, so we have now available to us a file menu, which you can actually select from the dropdown. So for example, if you go ahead and hit undo, then it will undo these eyes that I created here. And then if we wanted to start over and make a new piece of artwork, we can go and just make some rectangles. If we hold shift, it constrains it, although that was a feature from a previous sprint. We have the drop-down menu. This will be able to choose between design mode and select mode. This is basically equivalent to the way in Photoshop where you use marching ants to select different areas. In Graphite, the way it'll end up working is that you go from design mode to select mode. And this is also kind of inspired by Blender. You can just hit the tab key to change this menu between design mode and select mode. And then anything you draw using the normal set of tools will actually be your selection. And then you switch back to design mode, and then you'll have the marching ants covering up parts of your drawing that you've selected. And that will allow you to brush with the brush tool or do different things just in the area that is selected and constrain your artwork to those selected regions. We now have the ability, if we create a bunch of shapes, we have the ability to select shapes and even select a range of shapes. And for example, now if you just hit the delete key, you can delete them. You can also hide and show them. And delete some more. And then as we keep making shapes, they get added to the top. We also have now drop-downs. These are just placeholders, these particular ones, but we do have popovers for the color picker. And you can now pick your favorite color. You can even pick the opacity as you prefer, and then you can draw a partially opaque image over the top. If you want to also save the color that you're working with and have a different one, so if you want, pink and blue, you can then hit Shift X or this little swap button here, and it swaps between them. And you can also reset the colors back to the default of black and white, or hit Control Shift X. You can now see. You can also select the drop down for the blend mode, although that's not currently implemented for the actual ability to blend, but it does have a list now, which will be hooked up probably relatively soon. Am I forgetting anything, True Doctor, about what the remaining features are?
You can show the document export.
Oh yeah. So if we wanted to now export this, you just hit the export button and it gives you a dropdown. It gives you an export of that image, and then you'll be able to open it in whatever image editor you'd like or directly in your browser. And yeah, I think that is everything for this demo. So I will go back to the slides. 1 second. Okay, and we would also like to welcome our newest team member. If you would like to join this list, please join our Discord server and just express some interest by messaging us either in the general channel or in the development channel. And we have a lot of beginner-friendly tasks that are ready for you to take on at whatever skill level or whatever time commitment level that you are comfortable with. And finally, we have, before I start questions, we have an art contest. So if you would like to visit editor.graphite.design right now in your browser, and as a reminder, you can visit that link, editor.graphite.design, and this is a live version that is running in your browser. It is compatible with Chromium-based browsers and Firefox. And if you make some artwork, post it to the art showcase channel that we have in our Discord. And there's an invite link. If you go to discord.graphite.design, that will bring you to our page, which explains how you can get on our Discord server. And then post your artwork in Art Showcase, and the best winning artwork will be tweeted as the first ever tweet from our new Twitter account, which is at Graphite Editor. So please follow that on Twitter, and also please create some artwork. And at the end of this weekend, we will post the best one. Thank you. Any questions?
That's super cool to see a lot of the changes to Graphite this month. I think last month, especially since you only had one color, you can kind of see that there's some functionality, but this month there's definitely a lot of changes. And I was actually about to mention it to you that you should take a look at trying to have a art contest where you can just invite any artists to come along and kind of just give a try to what they can, because I think that you're really not too limited when you have these many primitives. Like there's a lot that you can do, I think. And then I mean, like for myself, I've been playing this game online called Gartic Phone with my friends a lot, and my best strategy is just to use like the square tool, because I find it way easier to draw with. And so for some things you can make some pretty unique designs, and so I'm super excited to see what comes of that, what kind of stuff people come up with.
And just to quickly mention, if you hold down the Shift key, that will constrain the selection, constrain the shape that you're making to a square aspect ratio, regardless of which shape you're using. If you hold Alt, it will draw from the center, and if you hold Shift while you're drawing a line, that will constrain it to 15-degree increments. And you can also still use Alt to draw from the center. So hopefully that is a little bit of helpful tips to anyone who's trying to make some complex artwork. And yes, now questions.
Yeah, so I think we don't have too many questions in chat. Someone said they love your system of slide control. That's good. You love to see it. But then also, people saying that they like that you're trying to like be the 2D Houdini, and other people are saying like it's definitely feeling like it's coming together with a lot of the functionality. And so yeah, I think I don't have too many questions, but I suppose I can always ask with like what types of progress are you looking at moving into for the next month?
Right, yeah. So this coming month, we are looking at adding a system for overlays. This will allow you to have if you're familiar with Blender's overlay system, you can toggle it on and off, and it basically draws outlines in different shapes over the top of your viewport. That's the same here. We want to be able to have selection outlines and different sorts of outlines over the top of your artwork. So it's not actually part of your artwork, but it is created by the tool that you're using to, for example, provide a bounding box to the selected layers, or to show you the Bezier curve handles that you're using with the pen tool, or basically anything that the tool needs to be able to show you information that you can click on and drag around. We're going to be building that, and it's actually going to be sort of the start of the node system as well, because we figured out the best way of implementing the overlay system is by essentially creating our own custom nodes that are in charge of rendering this content based upon the context of the document and of the tool. So it's sort of like we're going to be making our own nodes that actually render these overlays. And that will actually just be the beginning of what can eventually become your entire node-based system for doing all your artwork. And that node system actually integrates very completely with the layer system. So you can choose if you want to use nodes or if you want to use layers, because the two are completely interchangeable.
Interesting,
And
interesting.
just to upcoming things, we have currently 2 ongoing pull requests, one for adding transformations. So
that'll allow you to zoom and pan.
Yeah. And also implementing a selection tool, so you can actually visually select shapes with a box selection.
Not bad, not bad. We have a question in
And
chat
then-
here. Will I be able to procedurally make vector art, like font glyphs and others, or glyphs rather?
So definitely procedural vector art. That's the goal. Once we have the node system, we'll be able to do things similar to. I'm taking inspiration, for example, in this example I'm going to give from Blender's array modifier and lots of other modifiers that it provides. But if you use the array modifier or the array node in our case, it will allow you to take an input shape and then replicate it in times and potentially even around a curve or around a center point as you rotate it around. And it'll allow you to basically make, for example, a flower. If you create the petal of a flower, then you apply that petal to a array modifier that uses a circle as its rotational axis. Then you're able to modify just the petal after you've already made it replicated in a circle for you. And then you could make an entire field of those flowers by applying another modifier that randomizes the position. And also it could then apply some additional changes, such as it could do a variance of the color or a variance of the size, and basically allow you to make highly procedural vector art. And I think that's actually very unique. There is not any other tools that are able to do that to that same extent that I'm familiar with. I'm not sure about the question about font glyphs. Maybe that could be clarified, but I'm not sure what that question refers to. Eventually, it will be possible to make font glyphs, but I don't think that's procedural.
Sort of as an extension to that, are you looking at implementing some type of almost like scripting language? So like the nodes, they can represent code in a way, but also by having like a scripting language where maybe you could code out some of these ideas of like where you want things to be on the screen or how you want to duplicate things or anything like that. Has that been in consideration at all?
Yeah, we still need to figure out precisely the best way of doing this. One line of thought is to use WebAssembly and allow you to compile from any language that you choose. That way it is nicely sandboxed and secure, and we don't have to worry too much about security issues involved in providing documents to third parties and then worrying about including malicious code. If you were to use something like Python, that could be a concern. We also maybe could consider JavaScript, and then it would be cool also to consider Rust, or I think there's also the Moon project, which is a scripting language built for the Rust language. All of those are in consideration. And we also have the idea of basically creating a script runner node, and that node would basically be an API for any arbitrary scripting language, and you would simply use a plugin that connects to the language of your choice and allows you to write your code in any language. So all of those are potentially options that are under consideration, but we do have to get to that point in the future.
Awesome. That's some pretty exciting stuff. I think that's all we have from chat. So thank you very much, Kevin and True Doctor, for showing us Graphite this month.
Thank you.
All right, so finally we have Kvark here to talk to us a little bit about wgpu, but not actually here. He gave me a recording beforehand, and so I'm just going to play that and show off what has been going on with the wgpu reorganization.
The lead of wgpu, and I'm gonna tell you about the big transformation that's happening right now in the project. First, this is the map of things in our wgpu land. wgpu is a GPU abstraction, and it's involved in a big ecosystem of projects. It depends on GFX-RS, which has a whole bunch of backends, and it also is used by GFX portability. It uses Naga for translating shaders, and wgpu itself is used by Rust bindings, as well as the native bindings, as well as Deno, as well as Servo and Gecko, and there is a whole lot of other things. People made a few interesting things with wgpu, or maybe this one is better. Yeah. The good things about it is that it's probably the only safe abstraction of the GPU in Rust, at least in theory, because we still have issues in implementing this, but nothing conceptual. It's aiming to be the full Rust stack. It's currently already purely Rust on Vulkan and Metal, and soon is going to extend to other backends. It is backed by the webGPU specification, and our experiments are helping the specification to reach a good state. And it runs fairly well on Vulkan and Metal. We have a lot of happy customers. Now, the bad thing is how the developers feel about it, because every patch to the shader infrastructure has to go through 4 different repositories on GitHub. It goes in trains. And the worst part in it, the middle nodes of this train, the GFX and wgpu, are not very well tested on their own. They rely on downstream testing more. So it happens that sometimes they break, and we have to urgently fix them. Landing changes that touch different pieces here is hard. It just slows down developers. And we are trying to fix this. This was caused by a discussion in Bevy, which then transformed into an internal discussion at GFX. GFX itself has issues as well. It's a Vulkan-like API, and it's translating to Metal and all the other backends. The fact that it's Vulkan introduces the friction for us, because wgpu is not a Vulkan-like API, and the target APIs are not Vulkan either, so having Vulkan in the middle is not helping at all, especially when you need to add features that are not exactly volcanic. The weird thing about wgpu is that it wasn't always clear where the project would live. At some point, we thought that maybe it's going to live in Mozilla Central, just like WebRender. But then this never happened, and we continued operating in GitHub. It causes some confusion, and we don't want to confuse our contributors. So we want this story to be settled. GFX has a lot of functions that are not used or tested by wgpu, like render subpasses, and the only thing that tests them is GFX portability. Testing wgpu was hard because you would want to write tests in the Rust bindings, but Rust bindings are in a separate repository, so this caused a bit of a problem. We had different ideas on how to solve it, but nothing will beat just writing it in wgpu-rs. So here we are, trying to transform the project into a completely new wgpu that's lightweight and easy to move forward. For this, we are moving both the Rust API and the GPU abstraction into the main repository, which is wgpu on GitHub. This minimizes the number of steps a developer needs to take in order to land any kind of change, and also provides solid testing for everything. Also, we are relicensing the whole code base in MIT plus Apache, which is important for developers to make their own patches and port it to consoles and do whatever they want with it. We want the main project to be a single stop for all the discussions, all the changes, and all the pull requests. We want it to be well tested. We want our developers to feel great contributing to WGPU. Now, a few words about the graphics abstraction that we are doing. It's half port from GFX Hull and half re-implementation. It's going to be a very sane low-level abstraction, fully unsafe, but at the same time without any overhead for state tracking, lifetime tracking, or dependencies. It is using all the same concepts as wgpu introduces. For example, webGPU specification defines a concept called internal state for resources. And it explains how synchronization works with regards to combining those states. So what wgpu Hull exposes is just an explicit way to transition between those internal states. So it is a layer, but it doesn't introduce a new API. It's already using the API that was in the specification. It has explicit binding layouts, fences, and pretty neat to use by itself. I want to lend it with Vulkan and Metal backends later this month. And then continue working on other backends and release it on crates with wgpu 0.9, which will attract a lot of bug reports from users, but give us some solid testing. We appreciate help. If you have any questions, I'm not here for you, but please ask Connor Fitzgerald or Joshua Grooves. Also, we have discussions open on wgpu. And finally, let me show you how it actually works. We can start the water example. So this is already running the new graphics infrastructure. This is not using JFXRS. It runs on Metal. It runs very well by itself. We can run the other example. This is a compute example. It uses shader array length and emulating voids. These are all standard examples, but the point is that the Metal backend is already working, and more to come. The topic on the graphic abstraction is a big one, and it deserves its own talk, maybe next month. So this is it. Thank you for listening.
My mic was muted. There we go. All right. So thank you to Kvark for sending that in. It's always super cool hearing about where WGPU is going and the strides that it's making. And I think pretty recently in Veloren, we actually changed over our backend to using WGPU. And I think that's fully integrated now, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's it for this month's Rust Gamedev Meetup. And so super awesome hearing all of the products that are going on. Make sure to check out gamedev.rs to read this month's newsletter, which just came out a few days ago. I was the editor of this one, and it was a lot of work, but you know, you get some really cool stuff coming out of it. And so definitely go and read what's going on in the community. And a reminder, it is now 1 hour until the Veloren release, and so if you are interested in coming by, I might stream on some Twitch channel on how the servers are going. Let me just check this out. Okay, I think yeah, it's all right. Okay, so here's our Grafana, which is public. Anybody can go to it at grafana.veloren.net. But we're currently sitting at 50 players about right before launch, and we have like a pretty cool server with 32 32 CPUs, and so I'll probably be streaming this later, and then we'll be discussing how everything is burning down, because that's the tendency that normally happens during our release parties. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully we'll see you next month with some new cool stuff going on in the ecosystem. All right, talk to you later.